Hello, Eric. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to meet with me today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Cindy.
It is such a pleasure. Just looking at your resume is quite impressive. It seems like you're doing it all. When I look at you as a musical performer and the albums that you've released and the chart topping music that you've released, from that to the various venues that you present at, being an educator to the
Making me
next wave of
tired.
musicians. I know, the list goes on and on.
It's sometimes it's just too much, but you know what? I'm always been the type that tries to just do as much as I can and be successful at it. And I wasn't sure when you said resume if it took me back to my accounting days from my Shippensburg University BSBA that I have in accounting. I used to always have to have a resume for that, obviously, in the business world.
That's right.
Yeah,
I read that you majored in accounting, which I
I
think is
did.
so interesting. It to me that seems so different than the musical path that you're on, but maybe I'm mistaken.
Well,
Did it provide a good foundation?
yeah, a lot of people talk about the artistic part that you think about with the music thing, but music in its easiest clarity is just 12 notes, and they're all numbers. So one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, and then the 12, the four in
Mhm.
between, the chromatics. But yeah, so there's only 12 notes in music. So as a musician, I think of intervals and I think of, where I'm going with this line, where I'm going with that chord, and so forth. So it actually, for me, it has really helped.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear you break it down mathematically and
That's what it
numerically.
is. Yep. Yep. That's
Yeah.
what it is. It really is. I teach my students that too. It just, one, two, three, two, one. Even if it's something as stupid as Mary Had a Little Lamb, starts on the
Mhm.
three of the chord. It's three, two, one, two, three, 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 two, 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 three, five, five, and so forth.
That seems like it's easier to digest than maybe stepping into a whirlwind of creativity, which it
It
feels
is.
like it feels like maybe somebody might find that more intimidating.
Well, it can be, but as a jazz saxophonist, what I try and do is, and I teach this across too, if you have chords, like say a G7 chord and you have a C7 chord or whatever, you try and pick the notes. You don't want to think about all the notes in the chord necessarily at one time, but you think about maybe one note of it and then trying to go across that. So the G7, you have the B as the third, and the C7, you have the B flat as the seventh. And then you can, from that chord change, hit the B to the B flat, and bam, you just hit the chord change. So that's how
Mhm.
I think. I don't know how a lot of other, I mean, I don't know how a lot of other musicians think, but that's how I think when I play.
I love that. It's almost like the chord change is where the art takes place in between
All
this.
about the changes. And that's why I always say jazzers, I love rock players, obviously, all that stuff too, and anything you do. Rock players sometimes necessarily can't do what jazz players can do, and jazz players necessarily can't do what rock players do. But the thing with the chords is if you know that chordal foundation, like a lot of the prog rock that you guys book and so forth, there are
Mhm.
so many chords going on. I mean, you're not talking about just two, three chord songs. You're talking about 30, 40 chords in these songs. So it's a lot to digest and arrangements and so forth.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot.
That's it's interesting to think about it that way in terms of chords, looking at it at a
Yep.
granular level.
That's easy for you to say.
No, I just stumbled over
But
that word.
but all music
Granular.
is granular. You know what a chord is in its most basic form? A chord is
Yeah.
a collection of notes. So it can be the prettiest collection, or you can just press 25 keys down on a piano and that's a chord. And sometimes in music, depending on what people want to do, if they're doing like a scary thing or something like that, they'll use that 25 grouping of chords and just go,
Yeah. It's something you said in terms of how rock musicians and jazz musicians sometimes aren't able to play the other genre. Tell
Yeah.
me more about that.
Well, I think it's one of those things that jazz musicians sometimes think too much, and rock musicians sometimes don't think enough. And I think when you can put the perfect musician, in my mind, if you can put the perfect musician together where you can have that mix of both, because jazzers are always thinking about, getting to this chord and doing all that. Rockers are thinking more about the feel, and maybe the
Mm.
R&B people are thinking more about the feel of the music and so forth too. When you can put both of them together, you look at some of the great musicians of all time, whether it's George Benson on guitar, or any of the guys that can do anything. those are the ones to me that I really try and emulate, because if you can play all types of music, you can just a broad range of different fans will come and see you. And that's why
Yeah.
you see a lot of the prog rockers get a lot, or Steely Dan, for example, because they merged that rock with the jazz. I mean, Steely Dan, I mean, unbelievable. And that's what they were doing. They were mixing rock sounds with jazz, and just as it all started with the blues, blues rock all started with the
Mm.
blues, and jazz all started with the blues from New Orleans, and then it just expanded from there.
Yeah, I'd love to talk more about the merging of those sounds, especially when it comes to your
Yep.
sound, because you have such an interesting style. But can you tell me a little bit more when you're describing the feel of the music and almost like the thoughtfulness of the music? I think I have an
Yep.
idea of what you mean there, but can you tell me more?
Well, for me, I like to consider myself a field player. And that took many years. It's one thing that even when I was in high school, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't necessarily know what I was playing, but I always was one of those players that felt I could play it from the heart. And a lot of people, just they practice line after line after line, but they don't have that. And you hear this a lot with some jazz musicians, but sometimes the feel, especially on the R&B type of stuff, is not there. So I just sometimes will close my eyes and whatever I feel. And I'm not necessarily thinking about the notes. I'm not necessarily thinking about, I'm thinking about my hardships in life. I'm thinking about, things that have happened to me that, I wish would not have happened. We all have these hardships. And if you can feel that in the music, and hence that's why they call it blues in the beginning, that's how feel started, I think, really with music as far as the jazz vein of it. Now, obviously, classical music feels been happening for many hundreds and hundreds of years, but
Mhm.
for me, I always want to try and break down that barrier, whether I'm singing or playing, and so that the performer's not here and the audience is here. It always starts like that, but I want to do it like this. And then once they feel like they're part of the show, then you have them hopefully in the palm of your hand.
Right. I love hearing about how people can take their hardships and things that have been so traumatic and really infuse it into this musical world that connects people together and
Yep.
really becomes such an art, such a gift, and such a beautiful product based on something that was a hardship or a
Yep.
tragedy.
Well,
Um,
and how many songs are written about lost loves and
yes,
and I
that's
love
right.
you, and I mean that's for most people that's where they've been hurt so far. And I know I have, and in the
Yeah.
heart, that's where you feel it the most.
That's right.
Yep.
Um, as you're describing yourself on stage, reflecting on some of these hardships or these painful moments, it seems like maybe each time you're on stage, you're reflecting on maybe a different set of circumstances. So would that mean somebody who's playing emotionally, each time there's a slightly different iteration of the song?
Oh yeah, and I will say too. I was just talking to somebody about this last night. I've done about 5,000 shows over the last 28 years. I started with that when I was 19, and I think about how many of our fans and friends over the last 28 years that when I got into the business and where I am now have passed away, and it just continually is happening because I just know so many people from coming to see us over 20 years with the band too. Just lost a lovely lady that has been really sort of like a motherly influence in my life too. Her name was Betty Berger, and she passed away about a month ago. And it just it's I know Sinatra struggled with that too when his family started, or his parents started dying, and his friends started dying. And yeah, that's the one thing that we all have in common on this earth, isn't it? The hardships and losing people and trying to continually figure out ways to make our lives enriched by knowing them, but enriched after not knowing them too, and always having them in here. So, yes. So, to answer
Absolutely.
your question, yes, sometimes the iteration of what I'm singing, depending on what's in my brain and what's in my heart of What a Wonderful World, that's sort of like my go to song that I dedicate to people when they pass, Louis Armstrong's What a Wonderful World. And sometimes it sounds a little different. Sometimes it's a little more emotional if I'm, on the verge of tears.
Right. Yeah. And thank you for sharing about Betty. And thank you for sharing about how so many people are in your thoughts as you play these
Yep.
songs.
Yep.
As a listener to music, we know that it evokes emotion in us, and it comes from an emotional place in the musician. But just hearing
Yes.
you describe almost like that, what you're shouldering as you're playing sounds really
Yep.
powerful.
And no matter what hardships I go through, now I will say I had a really hard thing happen earlier this year, and I struggled on stage with it. But no matter what I'm going through, even now, I can go on stage, and for that couple hours that I'm on stage, I can hopefully get away from some of that. And I often tell people this too, and I think this is something in my life that I've really struggled with is being on that high, whether you're playing in front of 50 people or 20,000 people, being on that high when you're on that stage and then coming down and being a normal person again, it is hard. And and I've never done a drug in my life. I've never smoked alcohol, maybe one or two drinks a month. I can see how a lot of these entertainers that are really big stars get into the problem of things that they get into, drugs, whether it's cocaine or whether it's drinking 10 beers a day or something like that. And what they are doing is a lot of times it is hard to become a regular person again. It really is.
I never thought about it that way. I think we've all heard of the lifestyle style that sometimes accompanies musicians' lives,
Yep.
but it almost feels like what you're saying is there's such a high and low from being on and off stage that
There
maybe
is.
the substances helps to regulate that.
There is, and like for me, again, I've never done a drug, but when I'm on that stage, that is my drug, entertaining and being able to play and be able to sing and be able to make people happy. And then when that just and it happens all the time. We at the end of a show, it's like, okay, now you got to pack up, drive home, and then you're thinking on the way home, and it's been a struggle for me over the last 25 years of my life with that, with doing that. But it's just I try and that's one reason I bought the agency too. I try and turn to my business side of it. And then when I can do that, it seems like, okay, now I'm Erich Cawalla, just the guy doing contracts right now for my agency or the salesman or so there's so many different things, but nothing can describe being on stage. Those that have never performed, especially as a front man, nothing can describe that to this. And I can't adequately describe how that feels.
Yeah, I'm trying to imagine how it feels. And it seems like it's such a peak moment where everybody's watching you, you're pouring your heart and your soul, you're having this mix, as you mentioned, this intellectual and this feeling mixture
Mhm.
come together. Um, and you're also on your toes. You have to make sure that you're
Yeah.
trying not to make mistakes and you're
Oh, yeah.
coordinating with the rest of the band.
Yep. Well, and here's another thing too. Think about this. Two things. First off, I don't do set lists because I like to just the band has become so slick that I'll tell them the next song and then we just go right in or whatever. But here's another thing that you have to think about too. With all those people that I know, at the end of the day, when I come home, I'm talking to all these people at the show and having fun and energetic and all that. When I walk through these doors, I have three little dogs, which I love them to death, Poppy, Winnie, and Franklin, but it's just me. And that is the silence of that can be from being where you were at there to the silence of that. And I would assume that baseball players, any sports star, anybody that's the highest of the high to Taylor Swift to the lowest of the low, me, we all struggle on some degree with that. And that's
Yeah,
not to
first of
say
all, I
that I
wouldn't
don't.
put I think you're
Yeah.
being humble. I mean, you're certainly not the lowest of you're,
No,
in that high category
I
as well.
not like Taylor Swift, but I appreciate that. But I think that's something that, again, that's something that don't kid me. I like my solitude when I'm laying in my bed with my dogs and just relaxing. But it's just such a big swing. It's like politics,
Yeah.
here to
Yeah,
here, here to here. So,
right. I would imagine when you're on stage too, that you really have to, your personality has to be on. And then
oh
when you're
yeah,
by yourself, you're just with yourself. And
there's
that switches
hey,
off.
when I got my start with the Bobby Mercer Roadshow. I was 19. He hired me, saw me at the Berks Jazz Fest in high school or whatever, and he taught me some very specific rules. When those lights go on, doesn't matter what you're going through in your personal life or so forth. When those lights go on, you have to be able to perform because the audience doesn't care what you went through. They're spending their hard-earned money to
Mm.
come and see you. So you want to make sure that you kick butt for them. You never put your hands in your pockets when you're on stage. You smile while you're on stage. You're always doing something while you're on stage, moving left to right, and just going whatever. These are basic things that I learned when I was young, and I watched him because he was a show band legend and he knew how to talk to the crowd and all that. These are basic things that when those lights turn on, it's got to change. You always want to be dressed better than the best dressed person in the audience. Um, Little things like that. You always talk to the audience off stage because that is how they come and see you. It's just as important to talk to friends that come and see you. I always say friends instead of fans because I try and develop a personal relationship with everybody that I meet. But you always have to make sure that you talk off stage too, because it's just as important to be personable off stage as it is while you're on the stage.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I never thought about how, all of those pieces have to come together. If you're going through a difficult time, you have to put that aside. So
Yep,
in some ways, it's almost like an escape from your
it is
problems, and you're stepping into this elevated.
temporarily.
Yeah.
Yes, temporarily, it's that escape. And that's why some of the best entertainers in the world are the ones that are going through the most biggest problems. I mean,
Hmm.
that's just how it works because we can escape while we're up there, whether it's 300 people at the Allen Theater or whether, like I said, it's 20,000 people at some Hershey Park or at the Hershey Stadium there. It's just it's just one of those things that and it's something that I personally have I've struggled with it over the last 20, 25 years of my life, trying to figure out how to merge those two people. And sometimes it can be a Jekyll and Hyde, trust me.
Right. I'm
Yeah.
so glad you're giving voice to this because I always imagined that those down moments were a source of recuperation. I didn't
They
really
are.
even think about how
Yeah.
the in between they are.
Yeah. They are physically. I mean, I just ended like there was a point. I mean, I'm so busy right now because we play a lot of festivals and fairs and private stuff. This month I did 17 shows in 21 days and still going, but I ended in West Virginia last Saturday. And that was like sometimes we're doing 8 shows in 7 days, sometimes we're 5 hours away. We just got a gig to play in Savannah, Georgia. I'm playing a wedding at Disney World in November. So you just never know what's going to come and when it's going to come. But I will tell you the main thing, what I always say recuperation. I did a podcast interview years ago. They say, Eric, what are some of the most important things as a musician that you would give advice to your younger self or younger people looking to get into the trade? This one is a for sure 8 hours of sleep every night, 8 hours of sleep every night. Every night, you have to make sure that you get 8 hours of sleep, both for the voice as a singer and make sure you don't eat like crap
Hmm.
because you eat like crap, your blood pressure goes up, you gain weight. You're standing on stage. Oh, my back hurts, my knee hurts, my ankles hurt. Now we all deal with that to an extent too. That's another thing. Another thing that I try and tell people too is become a gym rat. I always have been a gym rat. I went to the gym since I'm 16 back in high school, but it got monotonous. And about 7, 8 years ago, I mean, I've had back pain for years. I was in a car accident when I was 18, and I think something with my neck and being a sax player, always pulling. So I actually finally hired a trainer because I didn't want to get shots in my back and all that stuff. And I hired him 5.5 years ago. And I can validly say that having a trainer has made a big difference in my recovery because he gives you a plan. It's almost like a treatment plan, almost a physical therapy type of thing. And now when I get on stage, I don't have to wear a back brace. I would wear a back brace for 5 minutes on stage. The first 5 minutes, I'd just be in impervious pain. And it would just, that's why I always wear a jacket. But now I have not worn my back brace in over 5 years. And I attribute that to my trainer, Mitch, at Why I'm Missing Fitness.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because a couple of minutes ago you mentioned you kind of compared the life of a musician to a baseball player. And
Yep.
what you're describing being on stage and the physicality of it does sound very
Oh,
athletic.
yeah. Hey, think about this. So if I'm doing those 17 shows in 21 days, they're not 5 minutes from my house.
Hmm.
Um, like the one in West Virginia was for the Stonewood Firemen's Carnival, and that was 4.5 hours away. And I drove home that night because I just wanted to get home to my dogs. I don't like sleeping on the road if I don't have to. Like tomorrow, I have to go on the road and sleep over because I have an early show the next day. But I pulled in at 326, and then it takes you a while to settle down. But the physical things, driving just in that same position for 3, 4, 5 hours. Okay, so you drive, now you get to the show. Now you got to set up, and we do all our own sound. So, we have roadies and so forth too, but I used to set the whole band up myself too, but we all help to set up. Oh yeah, then you got to play the show. Oh yeah, then at the end you have to tear it all down and get it into the truck. And then guess what? You have to drive home again. So there's some shows that you can leave at 10 o'clock in the morning and not pull in until 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. So you figure out the physicality of that in a day. I mean, how many hours are we talking there? 12, 16, 18 hours,
Hmm.
20 hours in a day. And so it can be the hardest of the hard job that when you're a road warrior like we are, it can be the hardest of the physical jobs possible, believe it or not.
I believe it. Just hearing you describe this cycle and
It's a
even
cycle. That's the word.
yes,
Cycle. Yes.
but even the moments of driving and being kind of
Yes.
pushed into the same position for 5 hours.
Yes.
I don't think
Yes.
people consider how grueling that can be.
Well, that's why I do yoga. It's good for
Mhm.
this. And then it's good for, meditation helps too, but yoga really helps. And I can almost do a split too. So I'm very flexible. That stuff all helps with your back too, but the muscles in your legs, the muscle in your core, that stuff can help. But you know what I've been having issues with lately, believe it or not? Numbness in my hands. And I think it's from this. I think it's from driving in the same
Oh,
position all the time. What happens when you do the same thing all the time? You tighten up in
yeah,
if you do the same thing at any position, no matter where it is on your body, it's going to tighten up. And I think it's right in there. So I never had these massage much, but now I started doing massages.
right.
My friend lent me her Mr. Rollio, so it like rolls your
Mhm.
and that has seemed to help. But yeah, it's crazy. I don't want to lose my fingers because that's my
Right.
saxophone magic.
That's right. That's right. Now, when you are describing kind of this cycle or this like these peaks and valleys, and first of all, it's impressive to hear how healthy and how in shape and how dedicated you are to
I'm not as healthy as you think I am, though.
with the
There's things
yoga
we all,
and yeah,
yeah, but there's some things that, like high blood pressure or like silly things like that. But yeah, it's
Mhm.
this business can create high blood pressure too, just because of the stress and the anxiety of it.
I can
So
imagine just
yeah,
really like the lights on, showtime, that
yep,
energy is
yep.
very intoxicating, as you
Well,
mentioned.
and just being on the road, too many peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and chips. But being on the stage, man, that's why Billy Joel wrote a song about it. It's called Pressure.
Yes,
And there's
that's
always
right.
pressure on you to perform when you're on that stage. Because as I said, people spend if they're spending $20, $25 to see us at the Allen Theater or wherever they come and see us, that's hard-earned money, especially in today's world that they have earned and they want to, they don't want excuses. They want to be entertained and they want to make sure that they have fun. And that's what we try and do. So there is a pressure associated with that, but you
Mhm.
want to make sure that you deliver every show, whether again, if it's 50 people or if it's 50,000.
And I've seen you absolutely do deliver. But let's hone in
Thank
on
you.
that word pressure. First of all, I love that Billy Joel
Yeah.
song, and that word I feel like could be mixed for people. Some people might hear the word pressure and feel like their back was against the wall and it's very intimidating, but other people might feel very inspired and stimulated by that pressure.
I actually am I can say inspired or whatever, but just to show you right here, this is my agent contracts for the year right there, and that's only about
Oh,
half of them.
oh
So when you
my
talk
gosh.
about pressure, there's pressure on all angles, like just the pressure to perform on stage, but then you have the pressure to make sure that your musicians get there. With my booking agency, you have to make sure that the pressure is there, that all of them get there, and that the client is satisfied, and that the audience is satisfied and the artist is satisfied. There's a pressure in the teaching environment in my studio here to make sure that I can, give the best role modeling and advice and so forth to the kids. So there's always going to be a lot of pressure. Just like today, it's a Sunday that we're doing the podcast here, and I have to make sure I do payroll today for the band, and then the agency I have to do payroll too because we had a lot of people booked this week. So, yes, there is a lot of pressure on all facets of it when you're a business person, entrepreneur. That's no doubt about it.
And it feels like well, first of all, I need to say thank you for doing this podcast in light of
Of course.
everything that
Of
you're,
course.
that you're navigating. But it feels like pressure has a payoff for you, a
It
positive payoff.
does. I always try and say this too is like one thing I've always been able to do, at least even back to an early age. I always wanted to be the best for whatever reason. And I know I wasn't going to be, but if you strive to want to be the best in everything you do, whether it's doing contracts, whether it's booking a band, whether it's making sure your rental properties are taken care of, whether it's making sure your studio is up and running, or that electric is paid or whatever, when the pressure is there for that, it helps me exercise some of my demons that we talked about when trying to be the musician and then be off stage. Staying busy, I think, for anybody is a good quality to have as a human because it just allows you to live a more fulfilling life and to feel like you are successful, and just continue to try and be as successful as you can. So the pressure of that, yes, today I'm feeling the pressure. And it's usually a Sunday or Monday, a catch up day, and that's what today is catch up day. The
Yeah.
pressure of catching up,
Yes,
you
exactly.
know.
Now, you mentioned feeling at a very young age that desire to want to be the best.
Yes,
And I wonder if we can go back in time. And do you remember the first time you felt that way and what the context was around you?
it definitely was in school. Just making sure that I didn't, maybe I had a bad grade or something, but it was at a pretty young age. I also come from a military family. My dad was in the Army and the Army's reserves for 28 years, and I guess they instilled that in me, or at least I saw him doing that. He was working all the time, and then he would go away one weekend a month, and then in the summer, 2, 3 weeks in the summer. And so he was very busy, but he made it work. And I guess seeing that, my grandparents worked hard, growing up, I saw that. And that's how I don't know. I can't add, I think some people, I always say this to my students too. There's two types of people in this world. There's followers and leaders, and I always ask them, do you want to be a follower or do you want to be a leader? I've always wanted to be a leader, and what really brought that out of me, believe it or not, I was used to be a very bashful kid. My mom would tell you that. But as I picked the saxophone up and it allowed me to get in front of people and singing, it allowed me to really do what I feel is important to me, and that is being able to make that connection with the audience and so forth. And um, here I am, 28 years later already. I can't believe I've been in this business 28 years already. And it just goes so fast. Life goes so fast, Cindy, doesn't it?
It surely does. And I really appreciated hearing about how you come from a long lineage of hardworking people and you
Yep.
really embrace that work ethic.
Yep.
It's also really remarkable to hear you talk about wanting to be a leader and feeling it sounds like it really came to a pinnacle when you picked up the saxophone and your
Did.
leadership kind of came into place at that moment.
I will say this. I picked the saxophone up because my sister Julie was in the marching band here at Governor Mifflin High School, and it was between eighth and ninth grade. So for a kid, that's actually a little later to pick the sax up. Usually they have it fourth, fifth, sixth grade. But I did it. I played it for a month, and it was not coming easy to me. The section leader at Governor Mifflin was making fun of me because, oh, you don't know your scales, blah, 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 blah. So when school started, I went into my band director's office, Paul Casano, rest in peace, and I said, I'm going to quit because I just can't do this. I was all set to quit that Monday. I went into that office. I said, I'm going to quit. I don't want to do this. And he just basically, he said, no, no, you're not going to quit. We'll make it work. Just in those 5 seconds, it's crazy how these forks in life, just in those five
Mhm.
seconds, by me not quitting, that changed everything for me. From that point on, it motivated me. It motivated me to practice because I felt like he had that feel that I could do this, and he saw the talent there. But me only playing for a month or two, I couldn't see the talent. And when the section leader made fun of me, that made me just feel like this. So in 10th grade, then they were doing, or was it 11th? Yes, 10th grade. I auditioned for the Statesman, and then I was an alternate, which was the jazz band. And then 11th grade, I auditioned for this Berks County All Star Jazz Band. And back then, you had to actually submit on tape. Remember tapes, cassette tapes?
Yes.
So cassette tapes, and it was a hard Charlie Parker song. I don't even remember what it was, But I practiced that thing for 10 hours the night before. 10 hours. I went into it and I just kept recording and recording and recording. And finally, I got one that I felt was good to submit. I submitted it. And what do you know? I made the band somehow. And then that's where Bobby Mercer saw me then, where I was scat singing and performing in that band. I had no idea what I was doing, but just being in that moment, being in front of people, became a leader. And I try and tell my students this: audition for everything, be in front of people because you never know who is going to be watching when you are in front of people. Had I quit, I never would be doing this. Who knows what I'd be doing? I'd probably be a CPA somewhere, Price Waterhouse Cooper or whatever, you know.
Mm,
But so I tell my kids, just make sure you just get in front of people so that people realize what you do. And there may be a fit. And it was a fit. He was losing some members of his band, and I had not picked my sax up in like 4 months when he called me at Shippensburg University and turned him down about two or three times. But I'm glad I finally agreed to go. And now here we are 28 years later.
okay. So interesting that you're able to pinpoint this um, really pivotal moment
Oh,
and
it
see the
was.
chain reaction of
It
what that
was.
led into. And you mentioned it's a fork in the road.
Yep.
Let's hone in for a minute on the moment when the band leader was criticizing you. My first instinct is to really have compassion for the young Eric, but I wonder if that criticism somehow propelled you to want to move forward even more.
I think at that moment it did not. I was because I vividly remember she was in 12th grade and name will remain nameless, and I was in ninth grade. And at that point, it crushed me, to be honest with you. At that
Hmm.
point, when I went into his office and he would not let me quit, just having that reinforcement of a good music teacher or any teacher made the difference. And I say that to this day and to my dying day, Paul Casano is the reason that I am able to be a musician because he would not let me quit.
I
And that
love that
is
tribute.
important.
That
Yeah,
is
it's
so
important.
important.
And then the poor guy passed away in his 50s of cancer. You know, my 12th grade year, everybody knew he was sick. And he told us that he had multiple things going on, lupus and cancer and so forth. But then he passed away in 2004. And yes, I still have the Louis Armstrong Jazz Award on my wall that he signed because it means, and it's in the center of my office here, just because it means so much to me that without, it's the reminder that without him, I would not be doing this.
Yeah, I hear the love you have for him,
Yep.
and I think that's such a beautiful tribute for you to really pay homage to what he meant to you. And
He
his
did. Yep.
legacy lives on in you and so many others.
Yep.
And now here you are, a music teacher. Can you tell me maybe what
Yeah.
you learned from him that you're now providing to the students that you work with?
Yeah. So I'm 47 now, and I started teaching when I was 22 and while I was in college yet. My first student was actually a gentleman who was in Chambersburg. He was the editor in chief or the president of the local newspaper there. And his name was John, and he wanted to play saxophone. So I said, yeah, I can show you a couple things, so forth. So by that time, I was, not a great sax player, but I certainly could teach a beginner. And teaching was something that I never thought that I really wanted to get into on a school level because, to teach kids 30, 40, 50 kids at a time is very hard. But on a personal level, one to one, I thought that it was something I could do because I could take what Jimmy Michael taught me at Michael's Music here in town. I could take what my other teachers showed me. Tony Cardella, I used to take flute and clarinet lessons in Frackville. I drive up there once every 2 weeks. So I decided to privately teach at my old house. And I still do it to this day. I've had about 100 students over the years and I've had some kids go into military bands. I've had some kids that have become full time teachers, full time musicians. Just being able to give back. You get a kid every once in a while that just is just amazing. And if they make all state band or all county band or all district or Eastern, it just makes you feel so validated in what you're doing for these kids. And I ask them, do you want to be a follower or a leader? Most of the time they say leader, but every once in a while they say follower. And I say there's nothing wrong with that. And that's just how the world is. The world needs followers too, for the
Hmm.
leaders to lead. So yes, so to this day, I don't teach a ton yet, just because with everything going on, I have about 8 students a week, typically
Hmm.
Mondays and Tuesdays, or when I'm able to do it. So a half hour right here in my studio. So if you're interested, you or Mike, and learning flute, clarinet, or sax, I could take you. Maybe I would take you on.
I appreciate that. I will definitely keep you
But
posted. I'm not a very musical person myself, but I'm a music lover.
here's another thing, and I tell people this too. If you see somebody as a musician that you know is better than you, ask them about lessons. Take lessons off them. I still
Mm.
take lessons to this day because there's always things to learn. And I was just talking to my buddy Nelson Hill, who was Phil Woods' saxophone player. Now you probably don't know who Phil Woods is, but Phil Woods was a mammoth jazz saxophonist that Billy Joel loved so much that he had him play the sax solo on Just the Way You Are. And every saxophone professional in America knows we have to know that solo. So we do know
Mhm.
that solo. But he was his alto player in his big band, and he took off of Phil, I guess, for like 10 years. So I've reacclimated with Nelson Hill up in, he's in the Delaware Water Gap area, and I'm going to start hanging out with him more and taking some lessons off of him because I've gotten to a point where I feel like I've plateaued, and now I just need some different ideas. And that's what I'm going to start
Mhm.
going to him for different ways to approach things.
I think it's so great that you're a lifelong learner and you're
Gotta
so
be,
open
aren't
to.
we all?
We are, yeah. And not
Yep.
only that, but you've referenced several teachers that you've had, and I can see that you really kind of carry in your heart your appreciation for everybody who's made a mark in your life.
Oh yeah, and I even when I'm in my studio here, like Tony Cardella, I think about things that he would say, while he was teaching me and stuff, and I find myself using that stuff in my studio. Not that I'm like, oh, I want to copy him. It just naturally happens because when you take lessons off of somebody for so long, it just naturally is a naturally occurring thing, And so many of my mentor teachers have passed away, and he has passed away, of course. Dave De Palma, who was my arranger too, passed away of pancreatic cancer, and it just so many of these people that have instilled who they are in me are gone now, but I still have them in here, and I
Mhm.
try and make them proud from above.
Yeah, that's so special, and I'm so sorry for your losses.
Thank you.
They've been immense, and I appreciate that you
Yeah,
gave voice to them here. I wonder also if we could go back on a couple of occasions you mentioned the importance for people to know if they're a leader or a follower. And you said there's no both paths are can be fulfilling. I think that's so interesting that you have people think about that question. Can you tell me what a musical career might look like if you're a follower versus a leader?
sure. Well, if just me on the just my example, I started when I was 19 and I learned under Bobby Mercer. I would watch him both business wise, because that's a big part of the music business too. Business. I always try, what's the most important word in music business? Music or business? It can
Yes.
vary. So
Yeah.
I would watch, you have to understand too, all leaders were followers at one point. So
Hmm.
to be a leader, you have to learn from the greats and you have to watch what they do and you have to become a sponge to everything they do. Now, a lot of it, so basically make a long story short, I would watch him and he would teach me how to go into the crowd and get standing ovations and all this stuff. And then I joined a band and then I joined a band called Burning House where I became the lead singer. I replaced Chuck Cahill. It was a soul Motown group actually based out of Lebanon, so not too far where the Allen Theater's at in Anvil there. And that is where I then learned how to work an audience, how to talk on the microphone. Whereas I did not learn that with Bobby Mercer because he was the guy that was the leader and he's the guy that did that. So in that way, then I was able to apply a lot of what I saw him do and what he taught me. But then there was a lot that I learned myself too about, oh, this might work if I do that or this work. And as you do that over time and time and time, then you become more of what you think you can be a leader. So I got to the point that I'm like, I want to be a band leader myself. I don't want to be just a guy in a band, a front man. I mean, obviously a front man's a leader, but I wanted to be the behind the scenes guy. I wanted my vision. I wanted everything to be put together. And that's what I did. And I started the Uptown Band October of 2006 or 2005 was our first rehearsal. And it was a 7-piece band back then, but we started it with the intent back then to be able to do all types of music, whether it was big band sound, whether it was Sinatra, whether it was Led Zeppelin, whether it was, Gloria Gaynor, I Will Survive, Love Shack, you name it, all the cover songs. And then as time went on, you get plateaued and you're like, okay, I want to do original songs now. And then, okay, maybe I want to, get a booking agency. Angeli Productions came to me because Terry Gaiman started that in 1983, and he said to me, "I like how you run your band, Eric. I'm gonna sell you my agency someday." And I'm like, "Dude, I want to be a booking agent. Booking agents, we're scoundrels, right? They're terrible people. No, that's not what a booking agent is. A booking agent brings a lot of people together." And I thought to myself, this is probably something that I could be successful at. So I bought the agency 13 years ago and have grown it. We're booking about 250 shows a year now at various spots all across the country. I became Conway Twitty and Loretta Lynn's grandchildren's booking manager. I have another group out of Nashville called Alyssa and Wayne Brewer. They do a George Jones Tammy Wynette tribute. But it's funny, I'm going on a tangent here, but it's like everything stacks.
Hmm.
So when people say, Eric, you're a musician, I recorded my Sinatra type album about 8 years ago at a studio here in Reading called Spiro's Modern Music. And I loved the studio. And he was getting older. And I said to him, what's your plan for this studio down the line or whatever? So we came to a deal and I bought it. Almost
Wow.
like a Bugsy Siegel thing did when he went to California. He just went up to the guy's house. I like your house. I want to buy it. And that's the whole thing about being. So I'm a musician, but I'm really an entrepreneur because I keep
Hmm.
just doing, and then you take that money and then you can invest it back into the band, or you can invest it into stocks, or you can invest it in your house, you can invest it into rental properties. To me, that's how I've managed to become successful.
Yeah, I like the stacking metaphor. I even when you with your hands, as you're
Yep.
almost layering each chapter on top of each
Yep.
other and seeing how each one is kind of informed by the one before. And you mentioned
Yes.
that, every leader, what started off as a follower, it sounds like maybe the baton was shifted for you when with the Uptown Band, would you say?
Yep. That's when yes, it was like an incarnation of being 19 under Bob, starting this when I was 26, but that intermediary of being with Burning House when I became a front man allowed me to see that part of that and then wanting to do it by myself and wanting to be
Mhm.
the man and wanting to be the guy. And I'm very fortunate that it's grown too because it's helped a lot of my friends that I'm able to get them a lot of work.
Mhm.
I love getting musicians and people that I know work. Now, I will tell you, it's an ugly business though too, because a lot of I have been burned by musicians that do not do things as morally as they should. For example, if I book them on a show with my agency, every contract states that if that show goes, this is agent 101. If they want to book you again or you get another show off of that, it's supposed to go through me. I've been burned a couple times, at least 5 or 6 times over the years, and I'm very hard fast to my rules that once somebody does something that to you, you can tell them once, and if they do it again, you have to put them out of your
Mhm.
life and not book them.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm sorry to hear that that's happened. But
Happens
it
all
seems
the time.
I can
Yep.
imagine. And
Yep.
what's really interesting to hear about your career trajectory is not only your accomplishments and your musicality and creativity and business savviness, but it's almost like there's a set of personality characteristics that are associated with these different chapters,
That's
being a
true.
band leader, being an
Yeah, that's
entrepreneur.
true.
Can you
Yep.
tell me what some of those like what are the different maybe personality qualities that are highlighted in your different
Well,
roles?
well, the first thing is, and we talked about this from the beginning, wanting to be the best. I call it being a go-getter. I've always been a go-getter. I've always wanted to be successful. I've always wanted to make sure that I have money, and I've always wanted to be able to give back my money to organizations, whether it's the Reading Musical Foundation or whether it's Arts Council or whether it's the Animal Rescue League or the Humane Society. That's important too. But some of the qualities I think that you're talking about in the different stages. When you're 19, one of the qualities is you have to, of course, there's a cockiness when people are clapping for you and all that stuff. But a hard thing for me was taking that a step back and realize I have so much that I have to learn here to get to where I want to
Hmm.
get to. So being at that age, hungry, although I will say this, I'm just as hungry at 47 as I was at 19. I've always had that hunger in me to want to continue to just be the best in what I do musically and personally and business wise and so forth. When I was with so hunger is one of those in the beginning. I also think that just being able to be a little shy and watch and curious. You need to be curious and to see how they got successful. And then as that curiosity grows and you have your own experiences, move on with those experiences. And then you get some of the other qualities that we talked about too, detail oriented. I've always been detail oriented, but when as business gets busier, you have to be more detail oriented. If you don't, you're gonna sink. So
Mhm.
now I would say at 47, the qualities that I have now as compared to when I was 19, 24, or whatever, and you can probably agree to this too, reflective of what
Mm.
what I've done over the last, I was a really, really tough band leader for the first 10, 15 years, just trying to be nicer, trying to be more amiable, benevolent to others, firm. I've always been firm, but I think my firmness now is more of in a fair way than before. It was just, I wear my emotions on my sleeve, and if somebody plays wrong notes or something like that, I used to get really mad on stage and stuff. I don't get quite as mad now as I used to.
Hmm. It sounds like not only is that a really comprehensive list of personality qualities, but also learning life lessons. You mentioned at 19, when you hear the applause, there's a sense of cockiness that it sounds like you have to learn how to engage with that
Yep.
cockiness and turn it into something else. You mentioned tempering some of the anger and now really leaning into niceness as a band leader. Can you tell me about those life lessons? Because they sound like they're very deep and they
Oh yeah.
probably took a lot to get
Well, I
to
was
from one point to the other.
I will say this too, the life lessons that I've gone through too, is first off, with losing so many people that you're close to over the years. Now I still have my parents. I'm very fortunate, but as you lose people, you realize more that life is short. Life is short. Doesn't seem short when you're 19. Doesn't seem short when you're
Mm.
25. Doesn't seem short when you're 30, 35. As you get into your 40s, it starts to seem a little shorter. As you're thinking, man, maybe over half my life is over. And I think that has helped me in a lot of ways. I've made amends with a lot of people, at least two or three people this year that whether it was because of the booking agency or whether it was just we did not see eye to eye on things, I have made amends with some of those people and fellow entertainers, and that has made me feel better in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
Because again, conflict only hurts when you don't like somebody, it only hurts you. It's not hurting them, and that's why I have tried to make a lot of amends with people. So I just think as I keep getting older, like you just said there, life is short, and we're all if this is the phase of where we're all at right now in our life, this is such a short phase for everybody. And some people that are born now are going to obviously live longer than us. And some people that are older are not going to live they're not going to live as long. And we're all just on this phase together here on earth. And then after that, hopefully above. But, we're really getting philosophical here.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the depth of what you're saying.
Yep.
In terms of both making amends with people and that relational piece, but also that perspective as you go through the lifespan, you do realize that we're here for a finite amount of time. And
Yep.
that
Very
really
finite.
does, lead to maybe a different way of
Well,
looking at things.
and here's another way that I look at things now, especially as I'm older. Like we talked about the question, are you a follower or a leader?
Mhm.
What about the question of, is it worth it or not?
Mm.
That's the question that, is it worth being mad at that person? Is it worth not giving $50 to this organization because they asked, I think life is all about those decisions and questions that we make, and they can be as small to the biggest of the big. But is it worth it? Is my musical career worth it? I probably lost my marriage over my music career because my ex-wife and we started the band together, and I'd always be in the office working and stuff, and I wanted to do it for us, but there was an innate thing that just of what we talked about of wanting to be successful too, that so again, the music business can do those things to you as well,
Yeah, I really
personally.
appreciate you opening up about you and your ex-wife and also that question of is it worth it? Do you find
Yep.
yourself asking that question at every turn when you're making a decision, or is it more that you retrospectively can look back at things and say that was worth it or it wasn't?
I think some things, I think that's it's not meant to be a loaded question that you ask, but yes, some things you will always ask yourself: is it worth it to drive 4.5 hours to do that for that? On that level, yes. But overall, is if I do I have any regrets about being in the music business? Well, I would say I don't necessarily have regrets. I have things that I probably would have done different. I think personally, my lifestyle, it's very hard for someone to accept what I do for a living. And hence, that's probably why I am single. That's probably why my divorce, that's probably why my marriage didn't make it. But again, there's many marriages that don't make it because of other things too. So, hopefully someday I'll have a woman that will understand what I do. I'm probably getting too old to have a kid, but as I get older, I'm thinking, maybe I should have had a kid, maybe just one or something. So again, yes, it is a question that we all ask, but if I were going to ask on a macro level, is the music business what I've been able to do and work towards and keep everybody working and make thousands and thousands of people happy? Yeah, that's worth it. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
and your willingness to reflect on some of those big life moments really means a lot to me. I mean, your willingness to be so open.
Oh yeah. And here's another thing. If anybody ever tries to change me and say, Eric, you can't go to that show tonight, or you can bye-bye. No, no. I will
Hmm.
I will make sure to merge things if it makes sense. But if it's you got to remember, every time that I go to a show, it's not just about me, it's about 8 other people in my band that I'm keeping working
Hmm.
too. So, and that's frankly, I'm fortunate I'm at the point that I don't have to perform this much, but I do it for my band members because I want to make sure that they're okay. I mean, things are expensive. Gas is expensive, and most of the members of the band are basically full time, but then they'll teach something, or maybe some do Uber, or nothing crazy, but the bulk of the income that they make is from performing. So I try to
Yeah,
keep the band
and
working.
caring for your band, it seems like is a big part of maybe being a band leader for you.
It is. You have to take care of people. Just silly things like, hey, do you need a hotel tonight? Because it's 4 hours away and you can't drive. Some people will drive home, but some people, if they're tired,
Hmm.
then I buy them a hotel room. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what you do. You try and take care of people, whether it's a client, whether it's your band, whether it's your fans. And I think if you do that, you will find you will find grace in what you're doing, and you also find happiness in what you're doing. But sometimes it's hard too, though, because you forget that every time you're going on stage, you're making people happy, even if you don't feel happy, and you forget that sometimes.
Yeah,
When we go through our own stuff.
it sounds like you're a real giver, and music it has given you the opportunity to really be a giver.
Yeah, and I didn't used to be. When I was young, I mean, people would say, Eric, you're so cheap, blah, 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 or whatever. But I just knew how to save, and I always had that type of mentality. And as I've gotten older now, I try and give back as much as I can, whether it's
Mhm.
to my family or whether it's to my niece or whether it's buying her books at, Albright College because they're crazy expensive, or
Hmm. Yeah.
giving back to people you love, and people that you care about.
Yeah, I think that's really touching. And you've shared so much already in our conversation today. And as we kind of maybe come to a close, I want to hone in on a word that you used a couple times. You talked about being hungry, and
Yep.
you said that that hunger hasn't um, been satiated. You're as hungry now as you were when you were 19. And I wonder if you ever envision a time where you're less hungry, or do you want to keep up that feeling of hunger?
Well, it's funny that you say that because as I'm leaning into this a little more, I actually think I'm more hungry now than I was at 19 because
Wow.
in some ways I've experienced things that I want to do like to get to that next level. Whereas when I was 19, I had not experienced that stuff, but I've been able to work with celebrities. I've been able to, you know, play with some of the greatest musicians on the planet. And I want to get into that. Like if in my perfect world, if I'm at where I'm at now and where Michael Bublé's at, I'd like to be somewhere in the middle, like a Steve Tyrell or somebody like that. Um, so that hunger. I have a new show coming out. I'm always trying to think of different ways to, reinvigorate my career. I have another doo-wop song coming out. I had a song. I know I'm writing doo-wop songs of all things, 50 songs, but I'm an old soul. And Cool Bobby B
Mm.
from Sirius XM has been kind enough to play my first doo-wop song twice. So I'm going to keep writing doo-wop songs and send them to Cool Bobby B, and hopefully he keeps playing them. But I mean, that's where that once you get some, I mean, I cannot explain to you how cool it is to hear your song in your car on Sirius XM radio. I just can't, like, I
Yeah.
cannot explain to you how cool that is. That's why I'm even, I think, hungrier now because when I was 19, I could not feel that because I wouldn't know what
Mhm.
that would felt like. Now I felt what that felt like. And guess what? I want to feel it again.
Yeah. Oh, I can't imagine what that feels like. It's almost like the more exposure you have, the more you know what is out there and what you
Yep.
aspire to further. That
Yep.
makes a whole lot of sense.
Yep.
I also like that you called yourself an old soul.
Oh,
I
I
think
am.
you, when you said that in the context of some of your musical interests, it sounds like you were referencing that you like musicians from yesteryear. But I also think when I think of an old soul, I think of somebody who's wise, has a lot of depth. What do you mean when you say old soul?
Well, when I'm an old soul, I do think about what you were saying, especially musically. Frank Sinatra, Bobby Caldwell, Charlie Parker, Stan Getz, all of those, Louis Prima, all of those, Wayne Newton, whatever. Those are my idols. Smokey Robinson, Frankie Valli. And those are my idols. And I try and pay tribute to those idols every time that I go on stage. And, everybody has a tribute show. Obviously, you guys book a lot of tributes at the theater there. So I had this idea like 7, 8 years ago. I thought, I've always had a falsetto where I can talk and sing like that. Whether it's Frankie Valli or the Bee Gees, or whether it's the Beach Boys, or whether it's Justin Timberlake or Michael Jackson or Prince. So I thought to myself, everybody's putting tributes out. Obviously, you had the Jersey Boys tribute. I know there's another group that does a Jersey Boys and a Beach Boys. So I thought to myself, why don't I just do a tribute to all the falsetto masters, Luke Christie or
Mm.
whatever? And it's a new show that we just recorded the promo with, and it's called The Falsetto Kings. And it's going to be a tribute that I'm hoping to take nationally across the theater and across to the theaters across the country. And it's an idea that was 8 years ago that I wanted to put into perspective then, but time and life gets in the way and business gets in the way. And I finally have said to myself, if you're going to do this, you better do it soon. So that hunger to bring it back, that hunger to try and get this out there. Now it's my next project, and to get the doo-wop song out there, and to get the next smooth jazz song out there. There's a lot of stuff in there that I want to keep putting out before my mortality expires someday.
Yeah, I think it's so neat that you discovered this skill of yours, where your voice goes, and that really propelled you forward to start this new band.
Yeah, I think it'll be.
Um,
It's what's cool about it is, and I don't have to worry about booking the Uptown band around it because I'm going to use the Uptown band as my backing band. So we can
mhm.
merge. That's a thing we talked about again about merging all different things and doing this. Then I don't have to worry about is the band member available? Is that band member? And that for a leader, that's a big thing. Trust me. It's nice to know that you guys are available when you're trying to book.
Yeah, I like your use of metaphor and hand as we talked about the stacking, but you've also talked about merging and you've used this gesture to talk about various things, including even as a booking agent. And I can see that you like pieces to come together, even that intellectual and that emotional
Oh yeah.
aspect in music. You like the
Yep.
merging, the marriage of sounds and experiences.
Everything comes together, everything, and it doesn't even matter. Like I wanted to make sure that the state too, whether it's like I'm on the board of my local community days here in Reading and Shillington, all that stuff, even because I've learned how to do all that stuff. Booking, I'm the entertainment director and the marketing advertising director for our community days. So that's a way to give back too. And they all come together. And that's something that you don't make anything on. That's a volunteer position, but everything that you do professionally should come together, and there's
Mhm.
whether I mean, look at these CEOs or these board members of all these big companies. Some of them are on like 3, 4 boards, and they've only done that because of being able to keep stacking it. People know who they are and be successful. And hey, would you like to be a board member on our board? So
One can say that you harmonize on and off stage. I love it. I love it. It's a part of your blood, right?
oh, sometimes to a fault.
Hmm.
You're always thinking music, music, music. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, I'm thinking I got to do that too. Oh yeah, I'm thinking I got to do that contract. Oh yeah, I'm going to Music Fest tonight. I got to get my stuff done. Oh yeah, I got to mow the grass. That's connected too,
Yes, the energy and the work ethic all,
making
flow
yes,
different tasks.
making sure you get all your tasks done at your house because it's only me, myself, and I here. So I got to make sure that the grass is mowed and the house is clean and
Hmm. During those valley, there's peaks and valleys and those valley moments.
hey, mowing the grass is definitely a low, 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 low value moment, especially when it's 92 degrees out.
I hear you. I hear you.
But
That's
I, I'm such a control freak though that I don't want to pay somebody to do it because I don't like how they do it. Told you that can be a fault.
no, but I think about all the areas where it's an asset because you mentioned before that you like your vision to shine through, and so really, that creative vision, that creative energy, it sounds like it really kind of peeks into all the areas of your life.
Yeah, to a point though. I won't my grass, I don't get it fertilized anymore though, because I found myself I had it one year and it looks so good, but I was mowing the grass every 3 or 4 days. I said, I don't have time for this. So now I'm okay if the crabgrass comes up, and I'm okay if the clovers come up, and I'm all right if that weed comes up. As long as it's green.
Yes, yes, yeah, you got to pick your battles, right?
Pick your battles. Exactly right. Yes.
Wow. Well, Eric, we covered so much territory, and I feel like I've learned so much about you that I never would have imagined.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm not just a goofy bald guy on the stage, I guess. I guess I have a few
No,
other
just
qualities that I try and
so many
hide from people.
contributions, so many contributions, so many skills. And just I love that hunger and that energy to keep going, going, going.
My advice to anybody that wants to get into the music business is know that it is a tough business and there's people at every corner trying to cut you down and cut you down. But if you stay true to yourself, I mean, even when I started the Uptown Band, I had people, even an agent, tell me, "What do you want to do that for when you're with Burning House? You're already playing." Because I want to do it for me and I want to do it
Mm.
because I want to be the guy. And if I would not have done that, I probably there'd be a lot that I would not be happy with myself to this day.
Well, you
So
have so much to be proud of. You've
thank you.
created quite an empire, and I just am so grateful that the Allen Theater gets to be a part of that.
We love the Allen Theater. What you guys, so happy you're there and you're putting in so many great live shows. I see things, and I said this to Mike last year. I could see the schedule starting to develop. And then
Mhm.
he said to me last December, he said, I really want to make this a live venue, performance venue. And frankly, it should be because it's, what Ed did to the theater there when he was there. I mean, just bringing it back to life. There's nothing, performance centers, in my opinion, across this country. There's nothing better than bringing back an old theater. How old is that theater, by the way?
1910, I believe,
Right,
is the first. It's gone through many different versions.
right. Yep. But think about that, though. Small town America. What is more Americana in small town America than having a theater? I mean, think of the memories that have been in that theater over the years,
Yes,
long before even movies. It goes back to the old vaudeville circuit. Bob Hope. I
yes,
mean, maybe Bob Hope worked that theater and we don't even know it, or those
right.
Charlie Chaplin or so forth. And there's so much history that we need to continue to keep these theaters going because so many of them, unfortunately, have either been demolished or they're just sitting there, just rotting away, and it's a part of America.
Absolutely.
It's
I
really a
completely
part of
agree.
America.
I could not agree more. I love that historical piece. And as I hear you talk about old theaters and breathing life into them, it really kind of comes full circle into the fact that you're an old soul. You like
Yeah.
the
Oh, yeah.
musicians of yesteryear, and you really like to preserve in general.
Hey, when I was 17, I was so fortunate. We sang in Carnegie Hall with the district chorus I was with.
I saw that.
And how that happened was the director from the University of Illinois, Eve Ely, had his Heritage Chorale performing that night. Well, they weren't able to make it, and he liked working with us so much that he decided to put us on that show. Free show, obviously, but to play Carnegie Hall when you're 17 was one of the experiences I will never forget, going in there and say, man, this is where the Beatles, this was where the Frank Sinatra, dressed, or this. I mean, think of that. That just blows my
That's
mind. And
right.
and the
It's
smell, that's what you always can
yeah.
tell when you go into one of those old theaters or one like Carnegie Hall, greatest theater in the world, especially America. And you just smell that. and think of the memories, whether it was Pavarotti or whether it was the Beatles or the Stones or whether it was, I mean, Josh Bell, you name it. Everybody that was anybody has worked Carnegie Hall, and there you are, in the dressing room, right where they dressed.
It's such a once in a lifetime. I can't imagine how thrilled it must have been. And I love how you
It
even
was
talked about
awesome.
like the smell of, all of those legends being there.
One of my goals is to get back to Carnegie Hall, and
Yes.
this time get paid for it.
Oh gosh. Well, I will be rooting for you all along. You'll have to keep us posted if once you
That would be
arrive
so
there.
cool. That would be so
Yes.
cool. But for now, the
Yes.
Allen Theater is wonderful
Yes.
too.
Well,
So,
Eric, gosh, this has been such a pleasure. And I'm just, especially knowing how busy you are, the fact that you squeezed in time to talk with me means so
of
much.
course. No, and we're happy to make sure people get their tickets. What is it? The AllenTheater.com? AllenTheater.com.
Yes, yes, it is.
AllenTheater.com. Christmas show, December
Yeah,
4th, the Uptown Band back.
that's that's
And check out
right.
my
That's right.
drummers. Check out my drummers, Yes Tribute, Perpetual Change. That's October 30th. That you'll love them as well.
We are waiting with bated breath. We can't, we're
I
really
love it.
excited.
I love
Thank
it.
you, Eric. This
All
has been
right, my dear.
amazing.
Thank you.
I've loved this whole conversation.
Thank you. Hey, me too. And I'm going to go mow the grass.
Well,
Plus,
have
you
fun. I
want
know
to.
it's a dread. I know it's a dreaded activity. I'll be cheering you on
Uh,
in spirit as you do that as well.
Thank you, dear.